When we arrived in Vietnam, we didn't really have any sort of plan. All that we knew we'd be doing is starting in Ho Chi Minh in the south and making our way to Hanoi in the north over the 30 days that we had on our visa, trying to see as much as we possibly could in between. Arriving into Ho Chi Minh, the first thing we realised about the place is that it's huge. Ho Chi Minh is home to 22 million people, so it's a true megacity, and we only had 3 days to explore it. On top of that, our first full day in Ho Chi Minh City was Grace's birthday, so I had to pack in a few surprises as well. Day 2 in Ho Chi Minh City, we were on the hunt for good coffee, so we made the obvious choice of going to an entire tower block full of cafes. We ended up in Arabica, which is a chain with the most pretentious menu imaginable, but the coffee is great and so is the view from the balcony of this particular branch. We spent most of the day exploring by foot with no real destination in mind. Taking in some of the sights and the shops, we ended up spending most of our time browsing on Book Street. Even though the selection here is mostly in Vietnamese, it's still an interesting place to have a walk around and chill for a bit. Lunchtime hit, and that meant it was time for us to get our first taste of some banh mi. I fell in love with it straight away, and from this point on I think I ate banh mi for about 50% of all my meals on the trip. I decided to give the famous Vietnamese egg coffee a try, but couldn't really figure out how I was supposed to drink it, so I horrified every Vietnamese person around me by eating the egg custard with a spoon. Maybe I ought to just stick to beer. For dinner we found a vegan pho restaurant for some authentic and cheap Vietnamese food. You can tell it's the real deal when someone rides a scooter through the middle of the restaurant. The food was fantastic and set us back a total of about £3. After navigating back to our hotel through the busy city streets, we called it a night. After scavenging something resembling breakfast food from the hotel buffet, it was time for us to depart and move on from Ho Chi Minh City. Today was the day we discovered our favourite way to travel through Vietnam, VIP buses with lie-flat beds. The driving might be crazy, but you can't beat the comfort of having your own space and a USB phone charger. Our destination was Dalat, a city in the mountains about 7 hours north of Ho Chi Minh City by bus. It is known as the City of Eternal Spring for its temperate climate, and I couldn't wait to escape the heat and humidity for a bit. We spent our first day exploring Dalat. The city caters to regional tourists, so there are plenty of resorts, cafes and restaurants to choose from. The highlight of the city for us was a sunset stroll around the huge lake at the centre of Dalat. Particularly impressed by the fact that you can buy beer from vending machines here, even if it is Budweiser. On day 2 we wanted to explore the surrounding countryside, so I hired this comically small scooter to get around on. First stop was a local coffee producer just outside town to consume some truly fresh local beans. Next, we took a white-knuckle ride in the jeep up to the peak of Liang Biang to take in some views. After taking in the vistas and some interesting installations, we descended the mountain in record time. With our desire to keep moving north at pace, we didn't hang around too long in Dalat, and were soon on the road again to Buon Ma Thot. We picked our next destination for 2 reasons. It is the next city northwards from Dalat, and it is home to the World Coffee Museum. Despite having a near intolerance to caffeine, I absolutely love consuming coffee, so this was something of a pilgrimage for me. In truth, the Coffee Museum did not live up to expectations. It's worth a visit if you're in the area, but we found that the museum and Buon Ma Thot as a city were not worth the time we dedicated to getting there. To make matters worse, we found when booking travel out of the city that the only way for us to advance was to head back southeast towards the coast to Nha Trang. Nha Trang was pretty much what we expected it to be, a highly developed beachside resort town. After our experiences in Thailand, we specifically sought to avoid places like this. Not that there's anything wrong with the place, but we'd seen hundreds of beaches by now and wanted to see something a bit new. So we only stayed the night before moving on again. After wasting some time with our excursion in Buon Ma Thot, we needed to start moving north at pace, so we boarded a night train bound for Da Nang, 500 kilometers up the coast. This was my first experience on a sleeper train and, to be honest, I hated it. How anyone could get a good night's sleep over the noise and the constant jolting movements of the train is beyond me. So we arrived in Da Nang, exhausted, but this wasn't our final destination. We hopped in a taxi to the historic town of Hoi An about 45 minutes away and got sorted with a much needed fry-up and coffee. Hoi An is a beautifully preserved ancient city that is best explored on foot. At night, the riverside area is illuminated with hundreds of coloured lanterns. I was particularly taken by the green, white and orange lanterns of the Irish pub. Understandably, tourists flock to Hoi An en masse, so you do have to fight through the crowds to get around. But despite this, the place is still charming and you can lose hours exploring all the side streets and boutiques, which is exactly what we did. After only a day and a half, it was time to move on, so we boarded yet another bus, this time to Hue, another historic city about 120 kilometers to the north. We hit the town on our first night in Hue to sample some of the famous local food, and I, of course, sampled a few of the locally brewed beers. Given that Grace doesn't drink, I also had to take care of any free shots that came our way. On day 2, we set out to explore Hue's walled imperial citadel. By this point, the frantic pace of our travels through Vietnam was starting to catch up with us, and this, combined with the stifling heat and humidity, meant that we didn't spend as long exploring the imperial city as we set out to, but the parts that we did see were incredible. Before we departed Hue, there was one more thing that I absolutely had to see. For the last 4 months, something very important had been missing from my life: live football. So when I saw that the local second division side had a home game on our last day, I just had to go. The first half was completely uneventful, but Hue scored early into the second. Unfortunately, the away team equalised, setting up a dramatic end to the game with the scores level. As soon as the game was over, it was time to meet back up with Grace, grab our bags and head to the station to board another night train. I couldn't wait.